Hello, everyone. You are listening to She Leads with Carly. I am your host, Carly Mulatsky, and my guest today is Sanjna Verma. Sanjna is currently a senior product manager at Plaid, a financial services company. But prior to Plaid, Sanjna started her career mainly in a growth and marketing role at Mulesoft. Then she was able to transition into product after Salesforce acquired Mulesoft. From this experience, she has accumulated 5+ years of technical product experience in enterprise tooling, B2B, and SaaS technologies. And things became a little more interesting when she actually left Salesforce as a product leader to start her own company this last year in Boxby, an online shipping marketplace for the modern gifter that enables users to send experiences over text or email. However, she ended up leaving Boxby to now be where she is today as a product leader at Plaid, where she's actually leading the expansion into Europe as well. First of all, Sanjna, it's so great to have you on the podcast. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to be chatting with you today.
Of course. So first, set the scene. Where are you in the world? I know you're not in the States, so tell me a little bit more about your environment. How's everything going?
Yes, I get to have my American accent actually put me in Amsterdam in the Netherlands, where right now I'm working on global payments for Plaid. So right now I'm focusing on our payments products between the UK and the European Economic Area. And I moved out here, I guess now it's been like almost 6 months. So just about half a year.
Okay, so still fairly new, fairly new in Europe and things like that, which we'll dive into. But first, I want to go back to NYU. You graduated in a degree in economics and computer science. So first of all, even you going, first off in growth and marketing at Mulesoft, it's also not so connected to econ and CS. So take me through this time leaving college. How did you imagine your career? What were you thinking of? How to approach the next steps?
Yeah, it's so funny that you bring this up because I think as of yesterday, it was like 5 years since I graduated college. So
Yeah,
it's like super timely to be reflecting about all of this anyways.
yeah,
Um, I think on one hand, there is this expectation, especially if you're studying computer science, that you should be going into engineering. You should be going into coding. And a lot
right.
of, I'm really grateful that my coursework was pretty applicative. It wasn't very theoretical in the sense of like, here is what you have to do with a GPU or something like that, like very theoretical stuff. Instead, we had a good mix of theory and application. Like, hey, this is Twitter. Today in our class, we're going to be breaking this down and trying to build a similar web application. And that was really, really good for me. So I was able to do these personal coding projects and get to better fluency with code as a whole. But I was genuinely not that interested in it. I was
Yeah,
trying to build and code. I was working for Microsoft at the time, working on IoT coding projects and stuff like that. I had this group of peers and mentors at Tech at NYU who helped me understand that what I was doing on a day-to-day basis at NYU and what I truly enjoyed, like why did I like doing what I was doing? And that's when I kind of came to this realization that I was building coding projects, but really the project wasn't done for me when the code was committed. It was actually that afterwards I'd spend some time putting together like a deck or a document that could outline a potential business strategy behind every single coding project that I would do. And whether or not I realized it at the time, it could be argued like I knew what I was doing, but really I don't think I did. I
yeah,
was like just understanding how I could go from an API or a very small microservice and try and build a company or business or startup out of it. So when I was entering the job market for the first time formally, I knew ultimately I wanted to be in something that would help me build. So I had this
okay,
background in engineering that I could always rely on. I could go back to coding if I really wanted to. But in
yeah,
reality, the thing that drew me was I didn't know how to articulate my own excitement, the reasons why like this felt good other than my own intuition. So
right.
learning how to quantify intuition was the whole reason why going into growth and product marketing was really important for me. And I could do it with somebody else's company and startup, like the stakes are different
Yeah,
when it's somebody else's project. And I was really lucky to find an open source company that was going enterprise called Mulesoft.
yeah.
Um, and I got to just jump right in and figure this entire new world out, which is not something they teach you in college.
Yeah. And it's interesting. It seems like even when you were building these, coding on the side and doing these coding projects, it seems like already you had this product lens, essentially. Like you weren't satisfied with just the code being done. You wanted to actually continue and see how do we, get it out there or improve on it. So I think that, comes even from an early stage in your career. So yeah. So
Oh, go
first of
ahead.
all, no. I want to know now. I know you did on Mulesoft it's called the Associate Product Management program, but I learned from you even before we talked that it doesn't just have to be product, and you did growth and marketing. So tell me a little bit about that and how it works. Is it only in Mulesoft or is this also in the industry?
You actually see it much more frequently in the industry. I think it's a very underrated part of the industry, but
Okay.
Google, for example, has an associate PMM program called it's like APMM, Associate Product Marketing Manager.
Right.
And they do exist at Apple, very notoriously. If you've read any of like these books on how the iPod came to be, they'll tell you straight up that there was nobody who was actually called a product manager. They were
Yeah.
product marketing and designers with
Ah,
engineering who
interesting.
actually built out the iPad or the iPod, iTunes, you name it. And that's where I kind of like felt a little bit more certain that it may seem unconventional, especially like think like 2015, 2016, when people are really like making a dent, like, yeah, I'm a product manager. I don't yet know what that means. But you
Yeah.
had this really underserved job function that was already existing and kind of thriving in its own right. So I at least knew that even though it wasn't conventional, it wasn't foreign completely.
Okay.
It wasn't like totally off the beaten path. It was just a different path. And different
Yeah.
wasn't wrong. And going in, I was really fortunate in my first manager to actually tell him that, hey, I don't truly know what it means to be in product marketing, what it means to be in growth, but I do know that somehow it should lead me to product management. And I need you to help me understand that. And that was like from the first interview I ever had with MuleSoft all the way to now. So he was instrumental, and I cannot stress how important it is to tell somebody in your management chain, like, what is the next step for you after this career? Like, it's
Yeah.
almost, unless you're really a doctor or a lawyer, even arguably in either one of those professions, you don't have like this 25-year long career path where you have to stick to this lane and you
Yeah.
can't like ever switch in and out. And that's the beauty of working in technology. Like you can truly be like, hey, two steps ahead of me now. I want it to look like this. So what do I need to do to set myself up for that? Like, what is the second order of insights, growths, the network effect that I'm going to be creating for myself in my own career? And so I was somehow lucky enough and strategic enough to do that. But no, I don't think again, like I said, I don't think I knew what I was doing. I just told my now manager, or at that time manager, what I wanted for myself. And he was like, okay, well, I too do not know what it takes, but we're going to figure it out together. Let's figure it out. Like,
Wow.
and he helped build the bridge for me to ultimately cross over. And also at the same time, show me like, look, in order for you to go anywhere, you have to prove that being here is a good thing. And
Mm.
that's like the first thing that I think, no matter what you do in any role that you take on at any level, your first year really is cementing metrics of ROI. Like this is the return on investment for you as this career, as this professional. And upon that success, this is how you can actually exceed expectations. By exceeding expectations, you kind of earn the right to say, hey, I'm going to go there next. And because I
Yeah.
did well here, you can trust that I'm going to figure out how to do well there. And that
Wow. Yeah.
trust factor has to start with like quantitative metrics, I always think. Especially
Yeah.
if you're a woman, you don't want to give people any ground to doubt you, your capability, or more importantly, your ability to work.
Yeah. Okay.
So,
Wow. Sanjana, I can go in a lot of different directions, but I really love that last aspect. And I want to dive into that because you mentioned how, focusing on the present and your own ROI and really making sure that, when you do reach that next step, you have full trust and no one can doubt you. So how does that actually look when on the one hand you're also working towards this goal, right? You want to be a product manager, you're working to breaking into product down the line, but you also have to do your work currently well and do it effectively and efficiently. So kind of if you can even give like a percentage, or like how should you go about your day, or should you do monthly reflections? Like how does that look to actually balance both of them?
Yeah, great question. I don't think there's a science, but I can definitely tell you what I did, and
Yeah,
I hope that
please.
works for somebody else. Um, so the first thing is I think about it a lot like how you go about getting internships, right? You're working towards a degree, but in reality, you're going to get a job after college, ideally. So
Yeah.
that's similarly what you're doing here, right? You're getting a degree in the current role that you're in with the outcome of moving you to the next spot.
Right.
And so it's actually, it's not as daunting as it sounds because a lot of times, especially if you're in university, you're already doing this. And so I think people should like, first of all, cut yourself a little bit of slack. You already have the foundation in your head to do it, and you're already doing it whether or not you realize it.
Yeah.
The second thing is um, I always write monthly reflections for myself, but on a weekly basis, I always basically had a letter to myself where I broke it up into a matrix. These are the things that I'm planning to do. These are the things that are already in flight. And here's what I was able to execute and deliver this week. And
Wow,
at the end of the
cool.
month, I would look at everything that I delivered and executed in the month and try to like write out, do I see any ROI, or was there anything gained from this output? So for example, it was like I wrote a messaging framework for a brand new product that doesn't exist. The
Okay.
thing that I did with it, I gave it to the actual product manager for that product. What they did with it is they turned it into a blog post in their name, which has, it either has some marketing dollars against it, it's created a sales pipeline against it, it can do anything that they want with it. But that's how I was able to show like this very internal thing that I worked on had a very external outcome on the outside. And in some point in time, whether it's 1 year from now, 4 years from now, it's going to have an ROI. And the really weird thing is, and this is like, even to myself, it's like cringing advice that I like shudder at trying to internalize myself. But a
Okay.
career is a long game,
Yeah.
and there's like no way that you can sometimes just trust what you're doing in the process. You just have to keep aware that you did something with the best framework that you could that will ideally pay off, and not everything pays off right away. So now, like 5 years later, for example, I've had people still reshare on LinkedIn a blog post that I wrote in my first month at Mulesoft.
Wow.
That now I look back on it, I'm like, wow, my writing style has really changed. This was not possibly like the best example on this technology, but at the same time, it's still a referenceable artifact. And I would not have known that when I was writing the messaging framework for it. So
Yeah.
it's weird how things come back full circle, but I truly believe that if you're really aware of what you're doing when you're doing it and tracking how it can pay off for you, you're going to be so much more informed about where you can take yourself. And again, like even though I was in growth and marketing, I could have gone back into engineering, I could have gone into product. I tried being a founder. It doesn't limit you to just be mindful and track what you're doing. And like you track your expenses already. Think about your work as like an expense on your credit card.
Yeah, wow. Okay. I first of all, I love that. I love it. You gave such a tangible action item that I'm going to use right now. But I think that's really great. And I guess a question for me is, when you're doing these weekly reflections and then turn into monthly reflections, are you sharing that? Are you sharing that with your boss? Are you sharing that with anyone? Or is it more of like an internal thing for you to keep track of?
It is an internal thing for me to track because
Okay.
at the end of the day, every company has their own way of evaluating your performance, stuff like that. You have to figure out a way of changing that framework that you're using to track yourself into something that will actually be digestible by the business, by your
Yeah.
management. Uh, Depending on your manager, depending on your company, they'll check in how often they want to. At Salesforce, I was checking in on a monthly basis with my manager. So we
Yeah.
were able to use this directly, like just copy and paste.
Yeah.
Uh, at at Microsoft and Deloitte, it was checking in once a quarter. So it was like I have to adapt what I'm doing into this framework for US professional. So it's
Right.
like, and every company has their own levers to do it. So my best recommendation would kind of be like at the end of every quarter, depending on your own like employment review cycles, it could be twice a year, it could be once a quarter, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Just take the time on a Friday and do an admin day for yourself. Like, file your expenses for the company and then also write out like this is what I did for my job
Yeah.
and put it into the framework because when you go into these success like results about your
Yeah.
performance, you want to be able to speak to the examples that are both good, not so good, and action items for how you can improve. And I firmly believe you do not ever, you're never in a place where you're performing badly if you know what you've been doing. In the
Yeah.
sense that I'm mindful that this was not a result that I had intended and it didn't meet my expectations. But hey, Mr. or Miss Manager, can you help me understand how we could have done this better? Let's retrospect together. And then I'm going to use this retrospection as a way to learn how to improve that.
Yeah.
The
I
worst
love it.
thing you can, yeah, I just think like the worst thing you can do is like be operating in a vacuum and not have any like social or professional accountability for your actions.
Exactly. Wow. Okay. No, I really love it. And I agree with you. I think it's this idea where even if it didn't go as intended, it's the idea of knowing it and being able to look back on it and what we can do differently and all of those aspects that come into it. That's a value rather than a negative. So tell me now, in growth, in marketing, product marketing, and then you obviously have an acquisition with Salesforce. At this point, you're still very much aligned that product management is for you, or how did you experience this acquisition and specifically going into product management now?
Oh, wow, what a meaty question. It's so first of all, I had this like understanding that when I joined MuleSoft, like people were fundamentally confused. Like, what is MuleSoft? Like, what do they do?
Right.
And I was like, great. Well, Salesforce is a big company, 35,000 employees all over the world, and God knows how many developers are Salesforce developers. Maybe it's easier to explain Salesforce. And it totally wasn't. So I was like, wipe this off. I'm going to this amazing big company that's also like totally in a professional world. It's not like they talk to you about Salesforce when you're an undergraduate, really. So I was like, okay, well, first of all, let me try and understand. Like, MuleSoft has been acquired by Salesforce. Why is this good for MuleSoft? What is the business value? Again, like if you like what I said about thinking about your career two steps forward, let's insert like take out you and put in the business. What is
Right.
MuleSoft's two steps forward? And the network effect that you're trying to create there. And all of a sudden, I was learning a whole new product ecosystem and in this whole new world of management tracking that I didn't even know existed. Truthfully, I did not really know what a CRM was until I got to Salesforce.
Yeah.
And by the way, for people who don't know what a CRM is, it's just a customer relationship tool to
Right.
manage all interactions between potential customers and current customers and stuff like that. And Salesforce had managed to take this very agnostic term for like the modern salesman or woman and apply it for every little thing that they could do to help you. So whether it's marketing your efforts, tracking your
Yeah.
sales, and I was like, great. Well, MuleSoft's two-step forward is being the layer that integrates all of those things together because these are individual tools today. It's like
Yeah.
you go to Slack to chat, that's different than going to, I don't know, salesforce.com to track your sales goal. Somebody in between should be telling the chat that you're having is trackable for future reference for the
Right.
next person who takes that deal. And that was eye-opening. I knew it was always part of MuleSoft's vision to be something like that. But remember, like, I was running a company with like 600 people at the beginning when I was
Wow.
there. Majority of them were in Buenos Aires, Argentina. So sometimes scale is just unfathomable when it works out. And that was like really awe-inspiring at that moment.
Yeah.
Um, my manager was amazing, and really delivered on their promise of like, hey, you have done and knocked it out of the park so well with growth and product marketing. Like, you can actually say that some of the stuff that you were working on was directly tied to this merger and acquisition. Like, this was the ROI. And for
Yeah.
a product marketing person, this is like, these are like hallmark moments. It kind of happens once, twice in a career. And it happened in your first job out of college. And I was like, whoa, yeah, yeah, that's cool. Like, I
Yeah.
had a hype person in my manager, and that's just so underrated. Like, when you realize that you have somebody who's not just responsible for your career, but cheerleading for your career, it's really, really special. And
Yeah.
I'm very grateful for that, and I still keep in touch with my manager for that very reason. Um, and they helped me transition into product because, frankly, this role of growth and product marketing was going to be dissolved with the acquisition. So it was like, you kind of have your pick of the pie. Would you like to go into, marketing at Salesforce, or would you like to go into product management? And I chose the latter. I knew that that was the second order effect that I wanted. But as soon as that came to me, have you ever had that moment where you're like, now what?
Yeah. Of
That's
course.
that's what happened. And I was
Yeah.
like, I have to like really quickly figure out what's my two steps forward now. Because I'm now here where I got to. And two steps forward for me was, well, I helped with the merger. I might as well help with I helped with the acquisition. I might as well help with the merger. Let me do the N in M&A
Yeah.
and do it with our geographic expansion. So, like I mentioned, Mulesoft was half headquartered, like all the engineering office was in Buenos Aires, Argentina. I went down there for almost all of 2019 and actually led our acquisition or our merger strategy, trying to define what is the developer roadmap with Salesforce look like, and also bring in the cultural aspect to show like we're not losing the cultural identity of MuleSoft in the process. In fact, Salesforce wants to learn from us how they can expand into Latin America. Their presence at that time wasn't super big, but they wanted to be in Buenos Aires, they wanted to be in Brazil, they wanted to be in Mexico. And these were the three hallmark geographies of LATAM. And so I got to go and like learn, educate the parent company, and help grow our current company. And that was my second order effect was two steps forward is geographic expansion and
Yeah.
technology is global.
Wow, that's amazing. So at this point, when you're in Argentina, you're in a product management role now? Like that's essentially, you're shifting focuses from marketing and now you're focusing on the product?
Entirely.
Okay, so take me through this time where now, you have the PM hat on. How did this look differently? What were the challenges that you faced? What were some things that you learned that really you didn't expect as a PM?
Wow. Also a great question. So when you are in ancillary function to product, so you're not exactly a product manager, but you're working
Right.
directly with them on a daily basis, you kind of get to understand what they're doing.
Okay.
I luckily kind of knew walking in that this is what is expected out of a product manager. But what I didn't expect is, first of all, the amount of translation complexity. I thought with marketing, you're translating this product into something
Yeah.
that the market needs. Well, now in product, you're translating this product vision for it to be built with engineering. And I think I severely underestimated how complicated that's going to be. On
Wow.
one
Okay.
side, especially for me, there was a little bit of a language barrier in the beginning. You're in Buenos Aires, Argentina versus San Francisco, California, and you're trying to explain like macro effects of this merger and acquisition to people who have spent their entire career building MuleSoft into what it is and
Yeah.
trying to make sure that they know that this is special, not not a bad thing. So I had to learn how to do that. I was lucky enough to study Spanish as well as like econ and CS. So I got to rely on that to be really informal with some of these discussions, but also at the same time being really formal and being really succinct and clear. Uh,
Mm.
I I call it at the time I called it the Instagram effect, but I guess like now it's just the TikTok effect, which is if it can't be seen in one scroll of your phone on email, it's not going to be read. It's not going to be digested. It's not going to be understood. And
Yeah.
that was like my like rule for thinking and communicating at all points in time. And I will say that like I totally like jumped off the cliff. Like it went so badly for me in the beginning because I was trying really hard to, maintain this professional dialogue with Salesforce and use the same words that they were using to build product with the team that I had already been working with for like 3 years at that point.
Yeah.
And they're like, this sounds super foreign. Why are you talking like that?
Oh,
And
interesting.
you got to switch out your cap. And that almost felt like a split personality to me. It was really hard for me to reconcile. And to be honest, I still struggle with that today in my career. I don't think I've mastered this in the slightest because nobody has all the context that you do at any point in time. Nobody also knows the one thing that they should be taking away when you're giving them all that context.
Mm.
And you're not going to know what they need in the first 5, 6 months of working with them in the slightest. So instead, for me, what I really had to, in some ways, like, swallow my pride on is I don't think I can say anything for 5 or 6 months. And I love talking. This is
Yeah.
really hard for me as an extrovert. But I can't figure that out because people themselves aren't aware about what they're trying to take away. So there's like the 6 month process in the beginning, right before I get to Argentina, of like, okay, well, we've been working on this product for so long. Do we still have to launch it? If we launch it, what are the expectations?
Right.
It took me 6 months to understand that this is what people are really asking. But instead, it's kind of coded, it's kind of covered, it's not really clearly articulated. But understanding that, like, your ROI, the customer metrics of success have totally changed now
Yeah.
because you're not dealing just with Mulesoft's ecosystem. You're now opening this entire world of all of Salesforce's customers who want to know what you do, why do you do it well, and what makes your product so unique in any iteration of this product. So that was a really big learning moment for me. Um, I think
Yeah.
yeah, go for
No,
it.
I
Also,
think, no, first of all, I think super, super helpful, especially talking about those challenges, even, the different language of you, speaking to the market and what the market, responds to, and now realizing, okay, I have to now talk to designers, engineers, and what speaks to them. I think that's so interesting and so valuable. And I guess like a very quick question, and obviously I think it's highly debated right now, but do you find that your engineering background has that helped a lot? And especially perhaps it's because it's a technical PM role and like Salesforce, very technical company, but what advice would you give for those who maybe don't have technical experience but they want to go into product? Does it play a big factor?
it doesn't.
Okay.
I'm firmly, it's weird. I could tell you both ways, but I think because
Yeah.
I didn't start off my career in a classic product management background, I don't think you need these classical elements to be a good product manager. The
Right.
qualities of a good product manager are being good communicators,
Okay.
being good abstractors of complexity, which, you know, it's really hard to do. I struggle with that one still.
Yeah.
And then lastly, more importantly, being able to like let go of the fact that you're not a subject matter expert and there are people around you who are is really
Yeah.
important. You should be able to jump in and like kind of like help with this one thing, but you can't be the directly responsible person for that. I will
Yeah.
never be responsible for the actual code because there's absolutely no way I could do it better than a true engineer. And
Right.
I'm totally fine with it. But if you came to me and you told me like, hey, these are the two solutions that we're looking at, and here are the technical trade-offs of both of them, and I think anybody could learn how to do that without a technical background.
Yeah.
So like if you don't have a technical background, you want to break into product management, I think understanding like how to do that trade-off when somebody comes to you and they're like, hey, here are two technical solutions, here are the technical trade-offs between them. How do you make that decision? That is what you need to learn. And you don't
Right.
have to go to engineering school to learn it.
Yeah. I love also the abstracting the complexities. And I think it connects to even your, nowadays it has to be a TikTok or Instagram version where, they can digest it so easily. And yet that's complicated to do when there are complex things that you have to, convey. So that's fascinating. And I think it's something that goes overlooked. So now I want to go into Boxby. You founded your own company not too long ago. Obviously, I want to hear about this experience, but even more so, I want to know kind of the similarities between product management and an entrepreneur.
Yeah. I don't think I could ever claim truly being a founder because I only worked on this for a year or so. But
Still.
uh, the the fact of the matter is that it's incredibly exciting to try and launch something on your own. So I wonder if anybody else was feeling this like I was, but I basically had an existential identity crisis in the pandemic. And I
Okay.
was like,
Yeah.
you know, second order effect. I wanted to do geographic expansion, but the fact of the matter is that borders are physically closed.
Right.
I had to leave Argentina, come back to the US, and I was like, wow, the second order effect that I wanted isn't going well for me. But I can turn that into something like, let me think about this. And I spent like the first half a year of the pandemic really thinking about what are the elements of the product management hat I enjoy wearing, which was really kind of taking the time to distill business strategy into a technical outcome. I
Okay.
love that. It still drives me today to like really enjoy my job. It's the hardest thing I've ever had to do. I'm not good at it in the slightest, but that's the challenge, and that's why it keeps things interesting. It's not boring.
So,
So,
so first, break that down for me. What you mean is,
yeah,
you have Plaid or Boxby or Salesforce, and you know their business strategy. So now it's saying like, okay, when we're developing this new feature, this new product, how are we a missing puzzle piece? Is that what you mean? Like, how do we
yeah.
fit into it to make it a great business to contribute to the strategy?
Kind of. So I think the first part is there's a common misconception that product and business strategy are the same thing.
Okay.
Uh, they aren't to me. Products are what gets built versus a business strategy is the foundation for those products to come to fruition. So
Okay.
I guess I would say like products are trees, but the business strategy is the seeds and the soil. Your
Right.
job as a product manager is to be tending and watering it so they sprout properly, they have the nutrients properly, and they're growing properly.
Yeah.
And that's the long game of a product manager.
Okay.
What I love doing and what I think really good PMs do well is that they go from the business strategy, the seeds in the soil, to building a game plan for other product managers to be watering, to tending, to letting the products sprout up as necessary.
Yeah.
And that's what I was like, you know what? I should try that as a founder. It's actually not really hard. It's not really different from being a founder because on one hand, you're like, hey, I know that this market exists. I know that this need exists. How am I uniquely positioned to solve that need? And
Yeah.
that's what changes from being a product manager to being a founder. So I spent 6 months in the pandemic trying to articulate that. Like, why me? Why me now? And what is the solution that I am uniquely good to build? And I had like this wonderful little ragtag team of developers who I knew and was really working to move this forward. And what we managed to do was build out a POC with almost zero code. So there's like this
Cool.
plethora of no code tools. We're going to
Yeah.
go forward and just try to prove that this concept is worthwhile. We proved the concept with really modest and almost conservative estimates. Like, we were just gifting 10 gifts a month on our
Okay.
platform. But that was enough to show, like, hey, when the pandemic ends, when people are almost like revenge traveling and trying to make up for this lost time,
Yeah.
they should be thinking about us when they're gifting and helping other people experience the world again. And that's what we wanted to do. That's what we were able to go out and fundraise for. And I loved trying that out. I had to stop it because on one side, it was like I put a timeline on myself on how much I could go without a salary. I was reaching that.
Okay.
Second of all, uh, it was, we went into the second or third wave of the pandemic. I'm totally losing count at this point. I
Yeah.
think it was the third wave. And I was like, oh my God, we're at three. I think I need to get a job just in case I get COVID because I've managed to totally not have that at this point in time. And the healthcare system in the US is not entirely forgiving if you
Yep.
don't have health insurance. So I was like, yeah, I'm like going to be turning the age when I can't really be on my parents' health insurance anymore.
Right.
So I think this is a really good time for me to pause on what I've been able to build and think about how I could build this even faster to the next level. Because I
Yeah.
didn't yet have the second order effect for this company in my mind, beyond being able to fundraise and launch a minimal viable product. So with Plaid, what I've been able to do is actually learn the cornerstones of working in regulated markets because one, it's I'm back to geographically expanding. I
Yeah.
love this. But more importantly, I'm trying to understand why it's so hard to be a founder outside of the US. And more importantly, why is it so hard to found, period? What are the
Right.
things that people don't tell you in between one, like version one and version two? And that's what I was trying to really understand. And now I get to see it from the inside, which I really like. And it's going to be an invaluable education for hopefully when I get to go back and found something again.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so I want to know, obviously you've mentioned the second order effect, which we talked about, and I really love this concept. As a right now at Plaid, as a senior PM, do you see it? Do you use this mindset from a very technical perspective in product, whether it's for a feature where it can be in, the next stage and iteration? How do you apply it?
Yeah, I do. I see it in like several different aspects. First of all, like as a product manager, you should be trying to see as many products as possible. Like, how are people like, putting money onto a credit card?
Right.
How does that look like if you're using this bank or that bank? And we have to look at that experience. And from a very like black and white, you just look at how it looks and you're like, oh, that doesn't seem great. Going down one level deeper is like, okay, well, why is it not great? Why does the credit card company need the name of your bank? Why
Mm-hmm.
do they need all of these extra details about you instead? And trying to understand that motivation is really important. Again, this is not an art I've perfected, but it's an art that I'm forced to practice, and
Yeah.
I'm always trying my best at it, but definitely not the expert at it. And then the second part is when you're building your roadmap, right? You have like first order and second order insights at this point. It's
Yeah.
like, okay, well, what is this feature beyond the first release? Like you are going to be delivering, let's say, a dashboard, but the
Okay.
dashboard just kind of looks like a glorified spreadsheet. What makes this glorified spreadsheet more productive? Is it icons? Is it better data insights? Is it the ability to export, import, or more? And that's where like you get to actually have a roadmap beyond the first thing you do with it. So
Yeah.
that's why I don't think features are just the first thing you ever see. And if that was a thing, I don't think we would ever have like, iPhone version 13.
Of
Somebody
course.
in
Yeah.
Apple for sure is already thinking about iPhone 20 and what that could look like. And
Yeah.
that's how you should be approaching building product. It's beyond what you see, it's what you want to do with it. And I don't know. I've had mentors in the past tell me this is the Mulan effect. I don't know if it's scientific or not, but it's
Okay.
like, who is this product I see staring back at me? What is that product actually going to go ahead and do
Yeah.
beyond what you can see? And that's the job of a PM in that sense.
Yeah. Okay. So I love it. First of all, this is great, and I'm learning so much. Before I ask you, what your favorite product is, because I have to ask that. But
Yes.
one, I want to talk briefly about the value of going abroad. And right now, being in Amsterdam, new culture, new language. Obviously, as a PM, a big part of it is leading by influence, right? You don't necessarily have authority you read about and things like that. So how is it all the challenges that come with it, and why should someone go abroad?
Oh, fantastic. I could talk for days at this. My sister is actually the first person who inspired me to go truly abroad again, because she moved to London in the pandemic and she's like, I'm going to
Wow.
try this out anyways. And I had come back from being abroad and was itching about it again. The the honest answer is that outside of San Francisco, you're going to meet people of all sorts of technical literacy levels. Uh, it's like when you leave reading Harry Potter and you understand like there's all of this other world of stories and
Yeah.
imagination that people are doing, that's the same thing with tech. As soon as you leave that San Francisco um, ecosystem, bubble, whatever you want to call it, you're going to see what other people are doing. And they may be 5 years behind you, they may be 10 years ahead of you. In particular, the fintech industry in Europe is a little bit ahead. They've been standardizing a lot of these access points for financial technology. So coming here and being able to translate those learnings into conducive insights for the US is really powerful. And then at the same time, being abroad just means a whole new different way of thinking. It's a lot more forgiving in some ways because you're not being forced to follow like the Silicon Valley career path that I think sometimes,
Yeah.
especially PMs, put themselves into. It's like gonna be a developer, gonna be a product manager, gonna be a chief product officer, gonna founder, then I'm gonna retire as a chief product officer again. And that's like your
Yeah.
most vanilla career path that everybody wants to do and has been doing. And instead here, it's like, well, you could be founding something as chill as like, a coffee shop that's run by a robot, which is actually something that's here in Amsterdam. Like they have a
Yeah.
robo bar. And that's a very different series of success metrics because they're now all of a sudden potentially customers of Salesforce, of Mulesoft, of Plaid, trying to use all of these ecosystems. And now you're starting to see that people are one step higher than the average technical fluency you were expecting.
Yeah.
So
I
how are
love
you
it.
going to be building for that? And witnessing it is
Yeah.
amazing. It's very fun.
I can agree. First of all, I'm very similar to your sister. I also moved to Israel during the pandemic, so I can very much see the benefits and everything. It's crazy. It's also you just learn so much about yourself, about the world, about everything, even far from,
Yeah.
career. So it's amazing. Okay, Sanjana, I have to ask, what's your favorite product and why?
It's not going to be a very impressive one, I think, in the sense that it's not like truly unique, but I love Google Photos.
Okay.
The privacy aspect of Google Photos is great. The ability to personalize your photo album with like maps and texts that are not like two individual photos. You can kind of group a caption to a bunch of different photos. It's lovely. And
Yeah.
I don't have any likes on this. I don't have any comments on it. And just send the link around so like, my mom and my grandma, they can see like how I'm trapezing around Europe
Right.
without, feeling obligated to respond. And I like that a lot.
Yeah. I like this question so much just because the why, obviously, interview question, things like that. But when people say the why, I get such a good sense of how you're thinking about the product, right? And like why, what
Ooh.
sticks out and why is it your favorite versus others? So I love it.
Yeah.
Sanjana, thank you so much for coming onto the podcast. I absolutely loved it. I learned so much. It was incredible. So really, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the opportunity. And I look forward to keeping in touch with you.